Imagine waking up one morning to the news that over 900 people, fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, had died together in a secluded jungle in Guyana. Not from war, not from disease, not even by accident. They drank cyanide-laced punch, willingly, at the command of a single man, Jim Jones. This was Jonestown, 1978. Not a battlefield, not a crime scene, but a mass grave built on obedience, trust, and unchecked influence. These were not mindless people. They were teachers, nurses, veterans, dreamers, ordinary individuals who believed they were part of something meaningful. And yet, they followed a voice that led them to death. Why? Because when critical thought is surrendered, when blind faith replaces doubt, and when a charismatic figure exploits fear and hope, reason collapses. Jonestown wasn't just a tragedy. It was a warning, a brutal reminder that under the right conditions, even intelligent, well-meaning people can be led into the abyss, cheering, chanting, and drinking poison along the way. How is it possible that so many individuals, people capable of reason, of learning, of independent thought, could be led, almost willingly, to their own destruction? We look back on the tragedies of history with disbelief, searching for some grand evil to blame. We tell ourselves comforting lies. That could never happen to us. We're too smart, too educated, too aware. We assume that intelligence is an armor against manipulation, that rational minds cannot be misled. But this is the very illusion that blinds us, because it's not always malice that drives the collapse of civilizations. It's not always tyranny that ushers in ruin. More often it is something quieter, subtler, and far more widespread: stupidity. Not the kind of stupidity that's loud and obvious, but the kind that wears the mask of normalcy. The kind that doesn't ask questions, that obeys blindly, that prefers comfort over truth. This form of stupidity isn't a lack of IQ, it's a failure of character. It's the unwillingness to think critically, to confront complexity, to say, "I might be wrong." It's the man who follows orders he doesn't understand. The woman who repeats what she's told without ever examining its truth. The crowd that cheers, not because they believe, but because it's easier to go along than to resist. This is how darkness spreads. Not through the calculated schemes of the wicked, but through the passive compliance of the many who never stopped to think. It was never just the villains who brought down nations. It was the ordinary people, afraid to ask questions, unwilling to challenge the narrative, content to trade liberty for security and truth for convenience. That is the real danger. Not evil, but stupidity, unthinking, unyielding, and utterly convinced of its own innocence. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian who stood against the Nazi regime, observed, "Stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice." But why is stupidity more perilous than deliberate evil? Evil is deliberate. It acts with intention, guided by desire, ideology, or self-interest. An evil person plots, schemes, and weighs outcomes. They are aware of the harm they cause, even if they justify it. Their actions are rooted in a dark logic. And because there is a method behind their malice, evil can be recognized, opposed, and resisted. You can confront it, argue with it, expose its lies, and even appeal to its self-interest to restrain it. Stupidity, on the other hand, is far more elusive and far more dangerous. It has no conscious agenda, no guiding principle, no end goal. It's not driven by hate or hunger for power, but by a lack of thought, a refusal to reason, a surrender to mental laziness. Stupidity fills the space where reason should live. It wears the mask of certainty without ever having earned it. And because it believes in nothing but its own assumptions, it cannot be persuaded with evidence, logic, or moral appeal. It is impermeable to correction. The evil person may commit atrocities, but they do so knowing full well what they're doing. They take responsibility, however warped their reasoning. But the stupid person stumbles blindly through the world, wielding influence without understanding, making decisions without insight, and insisting on their correctness even as everything around them burns. They destroy, not out of intent, but out of ignorance, and then look surprised when the damage is done. And that, perhaps, is what makes stupidity far more terrifying than evil. You can negotiate with evil. You cannot reason with the void. Consider the 1986 Challenger disaster. Engineers had warned that the shuttle's O-rings were vulnerable to cold temperatures. Despite clear evidence, NASA officials proceeded with the launch. The shuttle exploded 73 seconds after liftoff, killing all 7 astronauts aboard. This wasn't a failure of intelligence, but a triumph of stubborn ignorance over reasoned caution. Stupidity isn't merely a lack of knowledge, it's an active resistance to it. Ignorance can be remedied with information, but stupidity rejects enlightenment. It clings to falsehoods, dismissing undeniable facts as inconveniences. This resistance becomes particularly dangerous within groups. Social conformity experiments by Solomon Asch in the 1950s revealed that individuals would often conform to a majority opinion, even when it was clearly incorrect. When people surrender their critical thinking to the collective, stupidity becomes contagious, spreading like a virus through the ranks. Authoritarian regimes have long exploited this phenomenon. Adolf Hitler didn't require a nation of villains to enact his horrific policies. He needed a populace that wouldn't question him. Through propaganda and fear, the Nazi regime suppressed individual thought, turning ordinary citizens into instruments of atrocity. Psychologist Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments in the 1960s shed light on this unsettling aspect of human nature. Participants were instructed to administer what they believed were electric shocks to others. Astonishingly, a significant majority complied, even when the victims screamed in pain, simply because an authority figure told them to. Stupidity flourishes in the corridors of power. The more authority one wields, the more insulated they become from dissenting voices. This isolation breeds overconfidence and a dangerous detachment from reality. The 2008 financial crisis exemplifies this, as executives ignored glaring signs of an impending collapse, blinded by their own hubris. In our digital age, stupidity has found new avenues. Studies have shown that false information spreads 6 times faster on platforms like Twitter than the truth. Misinformation, often more sensational than reality, captivates and misleads, eroding the foundation of informed discourse. So, how do we combat this pervasive threat? The antidote to stupidity is critical thinking. It's the courage to question, to seek out diverse perspectives, and to challenge the status quo. It's recognizing that true strength lies not in unwavering certainty, but in the willingness to admit when we're wrong. As we navigate an era rife with information and misinformation alike, let's commit to vigilance. Let's foster environments where questioning is encouraged, where evidence matters, and where the collective pursuit of truth triumphs over the comfort of ignorance. Remember, the greatest threat to our society isn't just the evil that conspires in secret, but the unchecked stupidity that unknowingly clears the path for it to thrive. Evil is calculated. It plots, it plans, and it manipulates. But stupidity? Stupidity follows. It obeys without question, believes without evidence, and defends without understanding. Take, for example, the chilling story of the Rwandan genocide in 1994. A small group of orchestrators, driven by hate and political ambition, manipulated the masses using radio broadcasts. They spread lies, dehumanized an entire ethnic group, and incited neighbors to turn on neighbors. But it wasn't the handful of masterminds who carried out the killing. It was everyday citizens, teachers, farmers, shopkeepers, who picked up machetes. Many didn't fully grasp the lies they were following. They weren't evil in the deliberate, strategic sense. They were swept up in a wave of blind obedience, tribal loyalty, and uncritical thinking. And that wave claimed nearly 1 million lives in just 100 days. That's the terror of stupidity. It doesn't feel like malice, but its effects can be even more catastrophic. Because stupidity rarely looks in the mirror. It doesn't stop to ask, is this right? It just moves, infects, and acts as a willing vehicle for destruction. So if you remember nothing else, remember this: evil needs stupidity the way fire needs oxygen. It cannot spread without it. So, stay curious, stay critical,